Whether you're just beginning on your watch collecting journey or you've been in your decades long trek, one brand caters to watch enthusiasts of all sizes. Here's why Seiko is the one to go to, the fallback and gateway brand for watch collectors. Like, comment, and subscribe for content you'd like to see next. Follow us at Instagram at DesignAtelier for behind the scenes content. Email us at designatelierviewer@gmail.com. Designer Notes, Subject 74. Looking at my burgeoning collection, I realized how much I revere Seiko without actually revering Seiko. Historically speaking, I'm not the only one. After all, if you ask anyone if they would have heard of Seiko before, they would more likely say yes. Among Rolex and Casio, Seiko has the brand cachet and reputation to be suggested by watch geeks to their sons and daughters and worthy disciples. So let's play that out. To whom would Seiko cater to? Vintage watch collecting is one of the most satisfying and perilous endeavors you can get into, especially if you're just starting out. Whatever all the experienced watch geeks out there are saying is totally true. You need to do your research. If you don't have the time to do your homework, it would be very easy to be fooled with what they call as the Franken watch. Now, what is a Franken watch? These are watches that are made out of cobbled up parts from models or references to make a seemingly proper watch. These parts may or may not come from the manufacturer itself. And most of these Franken watches, of course, still work, and some may even argue that it looks better than the original. But for the purist out there, it's definitely not acceptable. But if your goal is to experience what it feels like to live with an automatic watch, add your own scratches on it without hurting your wallet and ego, then maybe a vintage Seiko 5 is a very attractive option for you. This vintage Seiko 5 still works admirably despite clocking in years in its lifetime. Most watch enthusiasts don't know, but back in the 70s and 80s, where watch collecting isn't as particular, it's quite common for watchmakers and service shops to use parts from other watches to fix and service a certain piece. Because of this, there is such a large amount of Franken watch available in the market, and not just from Seiko. With all of those being said, to many a Franken watch is acceptable. This 6139, for example, looks pretty good and attractive even if its inner bezel ring did not come in this particular reference number. However, costing not even a third of a good quality complete 6139, this is an opportunity too good for me to pass up. After more than 5 years of ownership, it still works with no issues, including all of the chronograph functions. One thing to keep in mind is that most vintage Seikos measure rather small for the contemporary taste, typically sized below the 39mm case diameter. These older Seikos typically also lack the hacking and hand-winding feature that modern Seiko lovers look for. Another thing to remember is that there are fake watches even on the under $100 range of automatic Seikos. However, it's much less common since it's not so lucrative for counterfeiters to fake already cheap Seikos. Vintage watches or not, fake watches are a definite dark area of the industry I personally could not recommend. Now, if pre-owned watches are not your thing and you're still playing around with the $300 price point, the Presage line of watches from Seiko is a definite recommendation. With classy designs that's a tried and true delight to many watch collectors, the Presage line of watches brings a premium look to the masses. The finishing and accuracy of these line of watches from Seiko is very attractive and can compete with many Swiss offerings in the same price range. This can be attributed to the brand's ability to mass-produce parts, driving the cost down compared to sourcing them from other companies. In fact, many other companies make use of Seiko's movements and parts to keep their own costs low. If the Presage is not your style, Seiko's dime watches also start around $300. The SRP line delivers great water resistance and robust construction while staying under the $500 barrier. Some really great quartz and solar watches from Seiko are also available at this price range. If there was any problem around this price point for Seiko is that there's so many models and references to choose from. I myself got lost with all of the choices. For this video, we'll stick around with the aesthetics and what I actually have in hand. The Presage delivers with a stunning dial, comfortable wearability, and even a reliable movement. Now once you start breaking the $500 mark, you can indulge now on the Prospex line, which has the top of the line features and finish that Seiko offers with their tool watches. Seiko has been recently setting a clear line between its entry-level offerings, which is the Seiko 5 lines, and then moving up all of their premium watches to the Prospex line. This premium range of watches offers more water resistance, superior materials, and more iconic designs, the very essence of professional specifications. Some of the notable models in this line are the SLA divers, which is a reintroduction of the very first Seiko diver, the much adored Alpinist line that has been recently generating much interest from collectors, and then there's the LX line. The LX models are touted as the pinnacle of the Prospex line, which uses the top quality finishing expected of luxury watches and employs the spring drive technology that is more common of the Grand Seiko references. Prices on these higher-end Seiko will easily break the $600 mark, going up to a few thousands depending on the material and model. Many would contend that for the prices that these new Seiko watches are going for, the brand has lost part of the appeal that draws enthusiasts to Seiko, especially now that even many micro brands offer the same materials at lower price points. Take for example this Seiko SRPA 83 Special Paddy Edition. This typically sells for $500. It's one thick slab of metal on the wrist with really great specifications, and even the finishing is really good and refined. However, for that price, you can have a Zelos that's made of titanium and sapphire crystal. At the Prospex line, you do need to start to evaluate yourself when you're going to invest on this line of watches. If you're a fan of the brand, it's a lot more reasonable to accept. But if the brand is not that much of a consideration to you, then exploring other options is the only logical route before dropping that hard-earned cash on a Prospex watch. Moving up to Seiko's other brand, yes, it's a totally separate entity, Grand Seiko, we would now step into the realm of high horology where the quality and prices seem unimaginable. Grand Seiko in recent years has been building a solid fan base within the watch circles for artfully crafted dials, hand finishing that's worthy of all the macro lens shots you can shoot at, and the technological innovation that even many Swiss brands aspire to. The brand itself started in 1960s, which was born out of competition between two ateliers. It's relatively young in watch brand terms, but has all of the makings of a contender for the top-tier company. However, before marrying yourself to the idea of a Japanese brand overtaking the Swiss, you must consider first if this is love at first sight at all. Many of the points that were made about Grand Seiko is very much dependent on a knowledge of what haute horology is. One must first understand and experience what a hand-finished metal is, or how the spring drive differs from all of the decorated automatic calibers out there. These are all very much relevant since adding the word grand in front of the Seiko effectively increases the cost of this dive watch by tenfold. This also effectively rules out Grand Seiko as your first high-end watch, which actually might be a good thing. Aficionados choose Grand Seiko because they truly appreciate what the brand stands for. I personally has not seen a Grand Seiko, which makes the myth to me much more appealing. But I came to the point that I realized that if enough respectable people talked about it, there must at least be some truth to it. But for what is available to many of us, Seiko is a true legitimate contender for your watch collection in all of the relative levels of measurement. That is why people build whole collections dedicated only to Seiko. That is why 6Killer2121 loves his SNE 331. That's why Peter was willing to throw himself in the freezing cold just to snap a shot of his SAR 033. And that's why ID Guy just officially declared Saturday as Seiko Saturday in honor of his first Seiko, the SPB 143. Seiko designed their watches to have a distinct image, reputation, and value. It's distinctly Japanese. It's distinctly Seiko. There's enough reason for it to be your entry point to watch collecting. The you can't go wrong recommendation. Or the watch that offers the top quality artistry that only a few can achieve. All good reasons for some poor chap to spend his weekend shooting a 1-minute intro.